And my name is Mary Ellen Scanlon, and I'm happy to be the service leader today again, along with all the other members of the service team, both in front of the scenes and behind the scenes. So if you have a minute later, please take a look at the names of everyone who's involved today in your order of service. You are all welcome here, especially those who are searching for a spiritual home. Many of us were once seeking for something larger than ourselves, to which we could belong, a sense of rootedness to hold us as we create meaning together. We do that well here, though not perfectly. In this congregation, we strive not for perfection, but for authenticity and connection. Our mission is to nurture each other, serve the community, and inspire action that heals the world. Following the opening words, Victoria will light the chalice. You may wish to have a candle or chalice to light with her. Our opening words are by Reverend Alice Anasheka Nasaman. In a time of uncertainty, when everything around us is changing constantly, each day new developments, rising numbers, changing guidelines, when the world we live in suddenly seems upside down and topsy-turvy, we light our chalice to remind ourselves of our grounding in our faith. We remember that the flaming chalice came into being as a beacon of hope during World War II, a secret symbol that offered help. In the midst of it all, we wrap ourselves in the warm light of a familiar flame, a reminder of the strength that emerges when we come together as a community.
So please join me in saying together our chalice. May this flame be our light of friendship and hope.
Good morning.
And there's Rachel.
We're going to start with hymn number 93, To Mercy, Pity, Peace, and Love. To mercy, pity, peace, and love, all bring their distress, and to those virtues of delight, return their thankfulness. Reach thankfulness. For mercy has a human heart, and pity a human face, and love a human form divine, and peace a human dress, and peace a human dress. Then everyone of every clime that prays in deep distress, praise to the human form divine, love, mercy, pity, peace, love, mercy, pity, peace.
Once again, this morning's story is from Hide and Seek with God by Mary Ann Moore. Today, we're reading Many Paths to God. Once upon a time, 5 travelers from different lands met near a mountain. These travelers had been told if they climbed the mountain, they would find God at the top. Around the bottom of the mountain, there were many paths to choose from. The travelers had been told beforehand which of the paths to take, and they also had been told that only that path would bring them to God. The travelers met each other at the bottom of the mountain and told each other of their search for God. The first traveler said, "I am trying to find God. I have been told that all of these paths, only my path is the right one to take, the flowery meadow path. I have been told that if I follow it, at the top I will find God, the great mother of all." The second said, "That's interesting. I have been told that the right path is the steep cliffside path over there, and if I follow it, at the top I will find God, the great Father in heaven." The third said, "Strange that we have all been told to follow different paths. I've been told that the right path is that wide river valley path, and if I follow it, at the top I will find God, the great Spirit in all things." The fourth said, "Yes, this is strange. I've been told to follow even a different path. My path is the deep forest path, and I'm told if I follow it, at the top I will find God, the great peaceful silence." Finally, the fifth traveler spoke, saying, "And I have been told something different from all of you, that the right path is the path with a view of the sea, and if I follow it, at the top I will find God, the great one who loves us all." The travelers were surprised to hear about all the other paths, because they were sure that the path that they had been told to follow was the only right one. They even tried to convince the others to follow their chosen path, saying things like, "I'm sure my way is the right way. Change your minds and come my way. Don't you think it would be best for you to come this way?" But none would change. So, bidding each other goodbye, they began their journeys to the top. As they started out, each was singing a song of praise to God. They could hear each other's songs in the distance, and they thought to themselves, "How very strange those other songs sound." But off they went on their chosen paths. They were soon traveling alone and could no longer hear any of the others. Sometimes following the path was easy, and sometimes it was hard. Finally, each of the 5 travelers neared the top of the mountain. They began to hear the other travelers' songs once again, but now they said to themselves, "I didn't realize before how beautiful those songs are." All 5 came to the top within minutes of each other, and they stopped and eagerly looked around. The first called out, "O great mother of all, I have found you." And the second called out, "O great Father in heaven, I have found you." The third called out, "O great Spirit in all things, I have found you." The fourth called out, "O great peaceful silence, I have found you." And the fifth called out, "O great one who loves us all, I have found you." But all of them were seeing and calling out to the same God. Then they realized that they had all been searching for the same thing, though each had called it by a different name and each had taken a different path. At this, they reached out for each other's hands, formed a circle right there on top of the mountain, and began to sing again. And now, as each of them sang their songs, there seemed to be only one song, a joyous song of love for God.
Let's hear this story this morning, Tim. When we come together, we share with each other our joys and sorrows, the things that make up the days and hours of our lives and keep us connected as a community. I ask on these interesting times when we're doing things a little bit differently that you email any joys or sorrows that you have that you would like me to share with our collective whole on Sunday mornings. And this week I received these 2. A joy from Lila Miklos. The city of Hamilton has granted permission for mosques to broadcast the call to prayer during the pandemic. So this is a beautiful gesture during this time of crisis, which is happening during the High Holy Days and the High Holy Season for people around the globe. Ramadan Mubarak. And from Sandy Lubert, the Lubert family is very excited to let everyone know that Sandy's niece Karen is due to give birth in September. And this will be a sibling for Imogen. So congratulations to the entire family. I'll bet that's a time of anticipation and lots of online shopping probably for baby things. And now we're going to take a few moments for quiet reflection, After the words, I invite you to just take a couple of good deep breaths, and then Cindy will be sharing, chanting with us. These words are called a prayer for living intention, and they are from Joseph Cherry. If we have any hope of transforming the world and changing ourselves, we must be bold enough to step into our discomfort, brave enough to be clumsy there, and loving enough to forgive ourselves and others. May we, as a people of faith, be granted the strength to be so bold and so brave and so very loving. Still in the middle of it. The pandemic hasn't gone away, and we may think we see a light at the end of the tunnel, but it still seems to be a long way off. For the most part, the initial pandemonium of the first few weeks has eased, but we're still living our lives in very unfamiliar ways, having to carefully consider our actions and our choices to ensure not only our health, but other people's health as well. We're severely restricted from our freewheeling days of hugging and being with one another and assembling with our beloved family and friends and communities. And we wonder, when is it going to end? You're reading the same things and seeing the same things I am, and you know that the estimates vary. And there are so many factors that are influencing the easing of restrictions and going back to some semblance of normal. It's just so many things to think about and so numerous and nebulous in this virus controlled scenario that truly there isn't any good way to predict when the doors will open and we'll be able to be with one another. So in the meantime, we cope. We try to establish and settle into new routines, and hopefully those lend some structure to our days. We rediscover the things that we can do instead of focusing on the things that we can't do. And as our confidence builds, we put on our masks and our gloves and we go out to do the things that need to be done. Whether you've ever been in Alcoholics Anonymous or not, I'm sure you're familiar with the Serenity Prayer. And sometimes that seems like a good thing to have in one's back pocket for times like these. You remember the words, "Grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, and the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference." It's a time when we've got to take care of ourselves, especially when it seems that there is no opportunity at times to take care of ourselves. I know that for some of you, this time of self-isolation is really not so different from usual everyday life. There's time spent alone with, or maybe with a few others. There's a simple life of daily activities and chores and responsibilities. There's finding ways to be engaged and entertained to get through the hours and the days. For whatever in life may not have changed, certainly the circumstances in which we're doing those usual things has changed drastically. And coping with those changes takes energy. For others, life has become completely discombobulated. Having to work from home, having one or more people having to work from home, having a number of people in home all of the time, having adults and children home all of the time, having to learn to be a full-time parent, as well as an educator and a recreation coordinator, having your child home with you while you still have to go out to work. Challenges all around. And it takes a lot of work juggling that energy and emotion and the needs of so many in a space that, as the days go by, can feel smaller and smaller and more crowded. Sometimes we end up feeling like there's no space or place away from people and input and news and needs. And we're faced again, just like everybody else, with interfacing with a changed and unpredictable world. And all of that, I know, is not an easy task. And then amidst all of this, someone comes along and tells you that you also need to make sure that you make time for taking care of yourself. You need to renew and refresh, to refill your inner reservoirs of compassion and calm and clarity. And it's all true. And it's me that's telling you that, because we do. You do, and I do. But when the reservoir runs dry, there's just no more water coming out of the tap. Use whatever metaphor works for you. But if you don't have that inner calm and wholeness and the resources to take care of yourself, you're not going to be able to take care of anybody else either. I know you know the truth of that, and it still makes it challenging to find time for ourselves. But all of us need to make time for the things that we know will feed our souls and restore our perspective, help us to maintain some balance and escape the depths of feeling tired or hopeless or tense, which can arise in such uncertainty. So one of the first places to start, I think, is giving up our illusions, perhaps, that we can be all things to all people at all times. We can't. We wish we could, but we can't. And we all have limits and boundaries that make it impossible to be on and available at all times for other people. Sometimes we need to turn off the media and just have some quiet. So I know in this time that finding the time that you need for nurturing yourself may force us to learn some new skills in the area of boundary setting and maintenance, as well as using the word no perhaps a bit more often. The others in your life, including your children, can learn to respect your need for solitude and rest. And by showing them your needs and asking them to respect your needs, you're also modeling for them the legitimacy of their own needs. You're helping them learn a skill in life that will be important. So you've claimed a moment for yourself. Now what do? How do you refresh your soul? Each of us has our own unique answer to that. But I'm going to share this morning with you a couple of my favorites. One of them is something that I picked up from Thich Nhat Hanh. And it's just taking a couple of minutes when I can grab them out of a hairy day or a time when I'm feeling tense, longer if possible, to simply sit and breathe mindfully. Here's words from Thich Nhat Hanh about why that's so important. Sitting and breathing mindfully brings 4 important elements into our lives: peace, clarity, compassion, and courage. When we are peaceful and clear, we are inspired to be more compassionate. And compassion brings courage, and courage brings true happiness. When you have great compassion within yourself, you have the capacity to act with courage. You have enough courage to look deeply at old habits, acknowledge your fear, and make decisions to cut through the craving and the anger. And if you don't have enough courage for yourself and others, you won't have the courage to cut off the afflictions that are making you suffer. Another strategy for when my mind is overwhelmed and I can't find my own words of comfort, well, then I turn to the words of other people, and particularly poetry. Here's one of my current favorites from the ever popular Mary Oliver. She says, "It is a serious thing just to be alive on this fresh morning in a broken world. It is a serious thing just to be alive on this fresh morning in a broken world." Mary Oliver is a great place to start. Her writing is quite inspiring for many people. But if you need some other names, try David White, Maya Angelou, or Rupi Kaur, K-A-U-R. You'll find some amazing things out there that might just speak to your soul when you need a moment of respite. It's important right now to love yourself just a little bit extra. You are evolving and learning, you are healing and growing, and you are discovering yourself all at once. We're in a place that we have never been before, and coping with the new always takes extra energy and focus. Another strategy is using a labyrinth. And if you can't go outside, use a paper labyrinth. You received a handout this week in the materials that you got that would allow you to print out a paper labyrinth, or use the palm of your hand. Your palm of your hand is very simple and very accessible, and you can use it anywhere because you've got it with you and you have a stylus, and you just put it on your hand, around and cross, around and cross. It's a great one for when you're standing in line at the grocery store. You're 6 feet away from everybody else, and they're much more worried about what's going on with them than they are with you, so they won't even notice that you're relaxing and focusing. Starting and following a spiritual practice can help us create a space for inner calm, for a sense of peacefulness within our confusion, and for creating a feeling of control when things are out of control or out of our control. It takes time to learn and use any practice effectively, so be compassionate and patient with yourself. And I've also found that with time, I get so that my spiritual practices really start kicking in for me and showing results in helping with my breathing and calming me faster than they did when I first started practicing them, perhaps because I've gotten used to the routine and I've moved it into my body and incorporated it, put it in my body. I can feel calm then with only 1 or 2 breaths instead of having to wait for 5 or 10 minutes or so. And it's nice to be able to be calm quickly. I know that there are many ways to restore our sense of wholeness and calm. Certainly it's nice to have better weather, and the easing of the restrictions is going to beckon us outdoors. There's chanting, as of course, as Cindy has been sharing with us during worship, and there's music and art and creativity and millions of other ways. I encourage you in this time to continue to use those that you know, and maybe find others or find yours, and give yourself the gift of renewal, so precious in these times of stress and worry and distraction. Have a good week. Blessed be.
And thus we keep despair at bay. And when we add a daily dose of laughter, we are on the road to healing. Blessed be.
This is the sound of one voice, one spirit, one voice, the sound of one who makes a choice. This is the sound of sound of voices too. The sound of me singing with you, helping each other to make it through. This is the sound of voices too. This is the sound of voices too. This is the sound of voices three, singing together in harmony, surrendering to the mystery. This is the sound of voices three. This is the sound of voices three. This is the sound of all of us, singing with love and a will to trust. Leave the rest behind, it will turn to dust. This is the sound of all of us. This is the sound of all of us. This is the sound of one voice, one people, one voice, a song for every one of us. This is the sound of one voice. This is the sound of one